Hi, SAS listeners. Welcome back to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah, I'm your host, Dave Markel, and this is episode 204. My guest today is Jeff Kohler, a United States Navy and Army veteran, an Iraq War veteran, and the author of the recently released memoir, The Vocal Minority. Jeff enlisted in the Navy immediately after graduating from high school in 2005. In 2007, he received orders attaching him to the Army's 1st Battalion, 5th Field Artillery, 1st Infantry Division, and deployed to Iraq for 341 days. Jeff's story is not only about his military service. It's about a sexual assault, the institutional failures that followed, and the immense personal cost of trying to speak the truth when others had a vested interest in keeping him silent. His memoir carries the subtitle of his life without needing to state one. It was not an easy life, but it was an honest one. In this conversation, Jeff tells that story as he experienced it, in his own words and from a perspective no institution can rewrite for him. Here's Jeff. Hey, SAS listeners, I'm happy to have with me in the studio today Jeff Kohler. It's an honor to have you. I appreciate you being here. Jeff has a former military background. Tell us about that.
Well, it's kind of a complicated question. I enlisted into the Navy, and then 2 years in during GWAT, the Army started having a hard time meeting recruiting goals and filling billets, so they went to the Navy and the Air Force, and I was individually augmented 1-5 FA out of Fort Riley, Kansas for 3 months, and then I deployed to Baghdad with a unit called Multinational Security Transition Command Iraq. I worked in the J6 shop, which is the comm shop, because that's what I did, radios, UHF, VHF, HF. I ended up working mostly with VHF and UHF radios, programming and testing out. And I went really out of my wheelhouse for what my job description was. Yeah.
How long were you in the service?
Well, I did 4 years of active duty and then 2 years of reserve of 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. And then I got medically discharged when they wanted to send me to Afghanistan, but I didn't pass the medical screening. So that was about like 2011, 2010. Mm-hmm. And the Navy Reserve had a policy, if you can't deploy, you're out. So, that ended my military career. Yeah.
Not a great policy, but okay.
Yeah, it was long for the ride. It lasts as long as it's an adventure, like it lasts as long as it lasts. And once it's over, it's over. So,
yeah. Well, not to sound cliche, but I sure appreciate what you did and the sacrifice you made. I know it's a sacrifice. I worked for Army for almost 6 years, 5 years, 8 months with CID. I know of the sacrifice. I know how hard you guys work at what you do.
Yeah.
And what you go through. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you've done for this country. So.
Likewise, I appreciate your sacrifice. It's not easy putting on the uniform, getting up, putting out 110% day in and day out, even when you don't want to. Yeah. So I thank you for your sacrifice.
Thanks. Like a lot of military people say, some of the best years of my life.
Yeah. So, I'd like to say it was the best, worst times of my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because like the guys I trained with, I went through Riley with, are some of my best friends today. I still stay in touch with a couple of them. They're like family to me.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
You got out in 2011, you said?
My discharge orders came actually in 2012. I got my orders for Afghanistan in 2010. Those got canned, and then I was no drilling status for like a year and some change, and finally the orders came. Yeah, I got an email with the orders, and I was done. So it was really strange, just to get an email and be like, wow, this part of my life is over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I was staying busy at the time. I was going to school. So it was like, well, this sucks, but I've got a class to take and I've got, tests to study for. So for me, it was back to the grind of student, one less thing I had to worry about as a student.
Yeah, for sure. What are you doing now, Jeff?
I'm a federal civilian employee. I work in human resources as a human resources specialist.
Nice.
Yeah, this job sort of fell into my lap. I was working as a contractor, and I had a bachelor's degree, and the announcement came out for an HR assistant, which all you need is a bachelor's degree to qualify for a GS5 position. So I took my bachelor's degree, I turned it into a GS5, and I like to stay busy, so I worked my way up from 5 to 7 and then got a 7-7 9/11 specialist. And the current agency I work for, I picked up a 12.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
yeah, I've
Nothing
been
wrong with
doing
that.
this since 2013, I think. Yeah, that's when I got picked up. But I've been working as a contractor, Green Badger, because the badges are green. I'm sure you're well familiar with that
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
um, world.
Yep.
But yeah, I've been doing it so long, they haven't fired me yet. They haven't taken away my laptop or my login. So, I must be doing something right.
Yeah. So you have somewhere to go every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something keep you busy. Jeff, thanks for filling us in. It's great to get to know you. I'll let my audience know Jeff and I have been in touch with each other for probably over a month trying to pull this together. And so here we are, and it's an
Yeah.
honor to have you. I appreciate you being here. Just to let you know, as my audience, that Jeff's story is quite unique, and I'm really honored that he's willing to share it with us and talk about that impact and how it's affected him and what he's going through. So, Jeff, what are you able to tell us about your experience?
Well, in order to do that, we need to go back to 1996 in Canton, Ohio. I had been out playing when my mother told me to come inside because I had a doctor's appointment I had to go to. My mom handled all of my appointments, drove me there. My mother and I had a bit of a disagreement, argument, because I'd been outside running around playing, that I was sweaty and smelly and didn't want the doctors to think anything was going on. And I told her it wouldn't be a problem, but nevertheless, we had a fight. Argument about it. So she drove me to the doctor's office in Canton, got checked in. Nurse brought me back. And then when the provider came, it was kind of weird. The lady that showed up spent like 15, 20 minutes at a sink, which I didn't understand why, but later on I would. Then she comes up to me. This was a new provider I'd seen. This was my first time being alone. My parents had thought at age 10 I was ready to start seeing, at some point you have to see the doctor on your own. And I had a school physical. So I asked her what she wanted me to do, and the first thing she did was she looked really excited. She told me to pull down my pants. And you go for a physical for school. One thing I noticed about the woman was that she wasn't wearing any gloves when she started touching me. At first, it seemed normal, and it got kind of weird. I didn't understand why I was getting an erection. I was trying to fight it, and then finally, I gave up, and I noticed the changing sensation. Had changed from sort of like a touching to a stroking. And I asked her what she was doing, and she said, "It's normal, relax." I never felt anything like that before in my life. At one point, being 10 years old, not knowing about how the human body works, there was a white substance that came out of my penis, which I freaked out about because I'd never seen that before. And she told me to relax, it's normal, and that I was a good patient. I had this sensation I'd never had before, and it finally got too overwhelming. I remember I blacked out. I don't know how long it elapsed, but when I came to, the lights were off. Her head was bobbing up and down on my penis, but I didn't feel anything. And then she noticed that had opened my eyes, and I remember her putting her hand on my penis to stroke. She asked me, "Jeff, do you want me to stop?" At which point I blacked out. The next moment I came to, her glasses were off, her head was tilted back, and her mouth was open. And when she did that, the lights went out. I instantly blacked out. Like literally, I remember hearing a pop sound. When I came to, I started crying. I don't know why. I just got really scared. I tried getting her off of me, but I couldn't. For some reason, I was just so weak. I couldn't understand what was going on. It was really weird. Like her eyes were closed. I couldn't understand why she put her mouth on my penis, and I didn't like it. I remember thinking, how do I get myself out of this situation? I thought about hitting her, and I remember what my father told me is that you never hit girls or women. So I was like, well, I can't do that. Plus, she's got my penis in her mouth, so if I hit her, I could possibly cause some pain. So the next thing I thought was like, well, maybe if I piss in her mouth, she'll let go. So I started pissing in her mouth. She started. I remember the sensation. It felt like I was on a roller coaster. When I eventually ejaculated, she finally let go of me, and then she told me to pull up my pants, and then I watched her go to the sink to wash her mouth out. She spent another 20 minutes there, and then that's the last thing I remember. So on the way home, my mother asked me if everything went all right, if the doctor had said anything, to which I had said no because I felt so humiliated and ashamed of what had happened. I really didn't want to talk about it. My story sort of continues on 4 years later. In 2000, I finally worked up the courage, told my mom I wanted to see a different doctor. And at that time, I decided I was going to tell the other doctors what had happened. So the same thing, you go to the same building in Canton. Nurse takes me back, sit on the table. The pediatrician comes in, introduces herself. She tells me to strip down, take off my underwear, and then I ask her to wear gloves when she examines me. And she asked, "Why would you say something like that?" And I told her, I was like, "Well, the last provider I saw started touching me with her bare hands. The current provider told me to wait." Two other doctors came in, one of whom I know, the other one of whom I didn't know. They all lined me up and they're like, "What's the problem?" And I told her that uh, the lady I saw before had put her hands on me, and their response is, "Well, she's supposed to put her hands." To which I respond, "Not with her bare hands." And then I pissed myself in front of three medical professionals. They didn't even flinch. I was 15 at the time, 14, 15 at the time. At which point the one male person left and the other two female providers asked, "Well, what are we going to do about this, Jeff?" It's like, "Who are you going to see?" He's like, "Well, I'll see Dr. Casper," who's the one, her name was Kelly Casper. She said, "Noel, she's retiring. You'll see me." So at that point, the one doctor left, and I was left with Dr. Casper. And I remember her taking me to the exam table, stripping off my gown, and proceeding to clean me, at which point I felt so embarrassed. I told her I was sorry she had to do that, but the other doctor had put her mouth on my penis. And she said, "I'm sorry, that'll never happen again." Nothing did happen after that. I didn't tell my mom about it because I was embarrassed that I'd pissed myself in front of three adults as a teenager. And I never spoke of it because I didn't want to admit the shame and humiliation I felt in that moment. I went on with my life after that. Fast forward to 2019, I'm driving to work and I hear another story, survivor story, come on NPR. And he talks about how the doctor had started the exam without wearing any gloves on. And it was at that moment that I'd realized that I had been molested as a kid, I'd been sexually abused. I promptly pulled over to an empty parking lot behind some shopping mall, and I threw up. Just talking about it, I can still taste the throw up. I can still taste the bile in my stomach, the feeling, the sensation when I heard that NPR interview.
Yeah. Jeff, let me just say I'm really sorry for the experience that you had. It sounds
Yeah.
horrific. Unfortunately, it's not unheard of, and it's more
Yeah.
common than I think most people realize. And I think
Yeah.
that's why it's important for you to share this. I say it all the time. We need to normalize this conversation. We need
Oh,
to
yeah.
talk about these things more and more. Jeff, what are you able to remember about the impact that this whole thing had on your life?
Oh, man. I had a really hard time making friends. I don't know why it was. I just had a hard time of getting along with people. I did not date whatsoever the rest of elementary school, middle school, and high school. I just felt like I couldn't understand why I would freeze when I would go up to a girl, especially if she had black hair. Looking back on it now, I know that, from what all the stuff I've learned about how trauma works, how the body keeps the score,
Mm-hmm.
it all makes sense. Up in middle school after that, I started eating a lot and not working out. I put on a lot of weight because I didn't love myself. Eating felt good and no one says anything. I didn't love me at all. I had very few friends. I had like maybe one or two people that I got along with. Everybody else, I don't know. I didn't understand why having a relationship with someone was so hard for me. One thing else I noticed is that subsequent doctor visits, I would always get sexually aroused when I'd have to see a female provider. I just figure it was because when I had to go see if doctor was for a physical, I didn't realize it was trauma until 2019. Even to this day, I somehow managed to have a relationship with my current wife who hasn't left me yet, loves me dear, is so much more forgiving than I could ever ask for. I lucked out. We met through a mutual acquaintance, but we'd actually met in person at a festival. And when we started dating, we realized we'd seen each other at one of the festivals here in Central Ohio. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So,
Congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you.
Good. Jeff, if you could help us understand going back, you talked about some of the impact that it had on your social life and how it impacted doctor visits that you had for that. Do you remember having like nightmares or any type of physiological impacts? You said you started eating a lot, but
I didn't work out. I found out eating food felt good.
Yeah.
I also got heavily into game consoles, into video games, because I didn't have to deal with people, and
Right.
it was an environment I could control. I, looking back on it, I didn't really have much nightmares. I kind of think my my brain compartmentalized that and buried it because it was so awful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just remember I didn't have very many friends. It wasn't until I joined the football team, and after deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I ended up losing 100 pounds my sophomore year. I joined the wrestling team and dieted, worked out, really got myself in shape, and that's how I got in shape for the military. Like I said, I didn't have very many friends. I did not date women at all. It seemed like something would come up that I would sabotage. The one thing now, looking back on, I realized for me, everything was either 0 or 100, and I didn't realize that was PT. I had no idea what PTSD is, what trauma, how trauma affects the brain. I just figured it was an unpleasant experience and left it at that. And it wasn't until 2019, when I hear that interview on NPR, that I realized I'd been molested. And being with who I was at the time, I didn't want it to weigh me down. So that's when I decided to get real serious about my mental health. When I worked a non-traditional program outside of the normal, how one would normally choose to deal with this through traditional talk therapy.
Right. How long did you participate in therapy, or are you still?
I still see someone, but now it's once a month. When I graduated, I'd stayed in the area, and the local vet center had a Saturday group that was only open to my generation. Oh, the Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom crowd at the vet center. And that was on Saturdays from noon to 2. I was pretty much a weekly visitor there. That's what I did for I think that group ran for almost 6 years. That's how I heard about the one program, is that at least 4 of the guys that went had gone through this program and had really life-changing results. I was like, okay, that's cool. Everything's going not fine. And then I get into a relationship with my wife. I've got a really good job, and I really care about this person. So I want to be the best version of myself for her and for myself.
Yeah.
So that's when I got serious about my mental health, is that I didn't want this to ruin me or destroy me. And I didn't think traditional therapy would work for me. And I was almost right on the money. That year, I made getting emotionally sober my number one priority.
Did you do some study on your own in terms of learning about the neuroscience of trauma and the impact on the brain and how it impacts people's lives, and that physical aspect that you were talking about, how the body keeps the score?
I'd read a few books, but it was mostly about when I got back from Iraq. I couldn't understand why I did some of the things I did. There was a book by Ed Tick called War in the Soul that really enlightening for me, because it talked about, like, the author is a Vietnam veteran and what it was like for him going through Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to come home. And one of the things he talked about was the Odyssey and Odysseus. Society's been going on to war for centuries, since before Christ. It goes back to the time of Rome. Even before then, thinking back to my English high school class about Odysseus and the Odyssey, that was sort of a huge thing for me. Like I said, I didn't really get serious with my mental health until 2019. I'd read all the brochures and literature the VA had given me, the readjustment counselor I'd seen at the vet center. I really wasn't one for books like that. I mostly read action thriller books. But yeah, starting in 2019, I think it was after I went through the program that I read The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm.
That was really eye opening.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea that trauma changed the way the brain rewired. Having read that book, having a different experience now, I can understand when and where that happened, like the exact moment it happened for me. That was a pretty, what we call a struck for me, something that I'd gotten really serious after I'd gone through the one program. I had my fellow traveler sponsor. I also got heavily into meditation. They have the program that I went through has a meditation prior to your 500-day program. The program's called Save a Warrior. They don't just put you through this program and kick you to the curb. They set you up with a 500-day plan afterwards. They have the program. You go through it and you come out changed, but there's still work to be done. You got to get a fellow traveler to travel with you. There's some books. After that is A Course in Miracles, but that's followed with daily meditation from SAW, from their what they call warrior meditation. I did that. I think I'm up to 1,930 days for at least 20 minutes a day. If I want the results, I got to do the work. That was my mindset. But everybody's 500-day program is different. Like for me, 2019, I was still heavy set, but afterwards, I got serious about getting back in shape. I found a program called Diamond Dallas Page Yoga. I changed the way I eat. I redid my schedule to allow 30 minutes of uninterrupted time in the morning to meditate before work. And then that would follow by workouts 3 times a week, anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. I've been doing that program now for almost 5 years. I would say I've gotten really good results. My strength is like tripled, my tone and definition. I can do a lot of more push-ups now. I'm probably in better shape than I am now than I was when I went in the military. Part of it is you take self-progress pictures. They're called non-scale victories. So you do your chest length, your bicep length. I put on at least 4 inches of muscle mass on my arms.
Wow.
I can't remember exactly what it's up to now, but
It's
I don't hurt as much with my lower back and knees. Don't hurt as much. The big thing is I feel a lot better from the changes that my wife has seen. She said that I am less quick to anger, and when I do get angry, it's not as long as intense as it was when we first started dating.
Yeah. Do you attribute a lot of that anger to the sexual abuse?
Yeah, mostly because I was gaslit by people who had taken an oath to do no harm. They violated that. Every counselor, readjustment counselor I've talked to does not understand why they didn't report it when I told them about it. The only thing I can think of is that they were complacent and they knew it was going on and they didn't want to deal with the problem. They thought the best way would be to cover it up. You can see now that a lot of agencies have done that, like Penn State with Jerry Sandusky,
Yeah.
the pervert up in Michigan. I can't remember his name. With the gymnastics. Even here at Richard Strauss here at Ohio State, that's been the talk of the town. For a while there, it seemed like more and more people were coming forward with having been abused. Most recently was a assistant fire chief, and there was a captain in a local area. I think there was another police officer who had come forward that he'd also been abused by Richard Strauss.
Let's put this in a different context now, too. Then, once you did start therapy, once you did start working out and your whole life started evolving and changing,
Yeah.
what type of intrusive thoughts still persisted in terms of that sexual contact?
Sometimes I think about it when I'm out in public, when I see somebody, especially a woman with black hair. Sometimes when I go to a doctor, when I go to the emergency room, or if I'm seeing a new provider, my anxiety and my blood pressure will shoot up.
Mm-hmm.
And so one time I had to go to the urgent care for an earache. My blood pressure shot up to like 170 over 130. I've had that happen with a couple providers. Like right now, it happened at one of my appointments. The one doctor I'd been seeing retired and they hadn't hired somebody new yet. So I had no idea who I was going to see. You know, it's not as intense as it used to be. Now it's gotten a lot better. The thoughts still come, but they don't have the intensity like they did when it would happen. I can remember there was one time I went to a yoga class. There was a short woman with black hair. I had to leave the class. I couldn't be around the class because I couldn't concentrate because I kept seeing her there. One of the other things I'd like to share is that after I'd been abused, I was at home watching TV, and my sister had come up from behind me and scared the living bejesus out of me. And when I turned around, I didn't see my sister. I saw the woman who'd molested me. And my first was, "Not today, motherfucker." And I grabbed her by the throat and I pinned her up against the wall. And it wasn't until when she started choking that I realized it was my sister and not the woman who had molested me. I made amends. That was one of the things I did after I went to Save Warriors. I made amends to my sister because she didn't deserve any of that. One of the things Save a Warrior taught me was there's power in vulnerability. So I decided I was going to be vulnerable with my sister. I shared with her what had happened. She told me she was not surprised because she told me after age 10, I started getting real violent with her. So yeah, I think I inadvertently took it out on my sister.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm eternally sorry, but I didn't know any better. I was 10. Kids aren't responsible at 10 years old for their actions. Like my life before that was cartoons on Saturday mornings with cold pizza, Little League baseball. That's something I have to live with. My sister has chosen to forgive me. I look forward to when she calls or texts. She lives out on the West Coast in Seattle. It's nice to have a relationship with her again. Nice to text with her. She's been really supportive of me through this whole process, especially when chose to write my story out in a book. I thought if there's going to be change, it's got to start somewhere. I figure, what can I do to change the subject? And I feel like putting a story with a name.
Jeff, how did you find sexual assault survivor stories, first of all? And then as a follow-up question to that, what made you want to reach out to me and to be on this show?
I found out about your program through Anna Marie Haubin.
Mm-hmm.
I'd connected with her through her Instagram page because they were looking for male survivor stories. And so I shared with her my story, and we started talking back and forth. And she's like, "Hey, you should check out this podcast." So that's how I heard out. I started listening. I listened to her story.
Yeah.
I thought I would really like the chance to add my story to that, because one thing I've learned is that men who've experienced sexual abuse don't talk about it. And even more so for those who were abused by women, because there's a lot of shame and stigma regarding that. I put a voice to a story, and maybe there's a guy who's had a similar experience, might not feel so alone in the world, or might find the courage to go talk to somebody, start feeling better about what happened to them, and work on their trauma.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so appreciative that you and Anna Marie connected. Yeah,
Me too.
she has a great episode.
That's a really powerful story, especially with her legislative action afterwards.
Yeah.
The Massachusetts Assembly, the state government. She's been a good friend. I sent her, I'm sending her a copy of my book. Maybe she'll pass it on to another guy that she messaged her the same way I did.
Yeah.
But
Is your book published?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
If you would, send me all the links and stuff that I would need to put that in my episode notes so that people can find out.
I didn't write the book for the money. I did it because I wanted to share my story.
Wow. That's great.
When I go online to somewhere, some other male survivors, I see comment, I'll be like, "Hey man, if you want to read my story, shoot me your email address. I'll send you the electronic copy, or if you send me your address, I'll snail mail you a copy." I know I'm not the only one who's done that. I know of another survivor who's done that, and it's for the same reason. We're not. I didn't write this to make money. I did this because I want to share my story. I want other people to know that they're not alone.
Yeah. The whole concept of being on this show, telling your story, is therapeutic in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I hope it has that impact on you too, because I certainly, as I mentioned before, greatly appreciate you being willing to share your experience with us.
I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Jay Clark and the band at Save a Warrior. When I went there, I cried there for the first time in like 20 years about what happened.
Yeah.
It was very powerful, life-changing. It's 5 days I'll never forget. I owe my life to Jake and Larry Turner, Sue Turner, everyone at Save a Warrior. They were in Newark, Ohio. They moved down. They built a brand new facility down in Hillsboro, Ohio. Any veteran, the 214 can go. All they got to do is put in an application. While you go, they put you up they give you a place to sleep, and they feed you while you're going through the program. The only caveat is you got to they take your cell phone when you get there, because you got to be on an island. That's part of their thing, is you're on an island away from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And the metrics they have, it's 99% successful if the person works the program, meaning they do work their 500-day plan. They get a fellow traveler. They take someone through the program through ACOA and ACIM themselves. They got a 99% success rate.
That's amazing. That is so cool. I ask this of all my guests because it's a really important aspect to telling your story, but it's also something that I think the audience finds extremely helpful. Could you help us understand what you will do after this conversation is over and all of this stuff that you went through at age 10 comes back to the forefront of your brain like it has during the last 45 minutes or so that we've been talking? How will you handle any intrusive thoughts that come up or any implicit memories that you didn't even know were in there? And now you're remembering, oh, this happened too. What do you do with those, and how do you take care of yourself?
With all the meditation I've done, the last phase is where you acknowledge each thought that comes up, each memory that comes up, and I treat it like I'm sitting watching a river or a body of water with leaves in it. Each leaf represents a thought or a memory. What you're supposed to do, it doesn't happen at every meditation, but for the majority, is I acknowledge the thought and then I move on to the next one. As far as self-care is, I might take a walk with my wife. I might go look at pictures of our Key West vacation. I might call my fellow traveler. I'm not God. I can't predict the future. But this time I guess it's weird because I don't feel afraid this time. Ever since writing the book and being open about this, it's lost a lot of the power grasp on me that it had when I first, after hearing that radio program in 2019. It's a nice evening out here in Central Ohio. Like I said, I might take a walk. I might do something with my wife. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've really tried to go with the flow of things now since SAW and with all the meditation.
I'm glad that's part of your life. It sounds super impressive. Jeff, to close up here, what do you hope comes out of being on this show? What do you see as a result of this?
I would hope that maybe there's a guy struggling who'd been abused as a kid. I would love for one of the prosecutors at the Stark County Prosecutor's Office to hear this and hear my story as to how I never got justice. I guess for me, I'm proud that I did this to share my story, so maybe someone else won't feel so alone in this. Because our society, there's a lot of stigma around it for men reporting this about how they're less manly. And when you get traumatized, your body shuts fight, fright, or freeze. I didn't know that at the time, but looking back on it, it's like, yeah, I totally understand why I reacted that way, because that's how trauma works. I was only 10 years old. I wasn't responsible for that. I wasn't an adult, Yeah. But yeah, I hope for the man out there who's struggling with this, I want them to feel less alone.
That's so impressive of you and so generous of you to take the time and be here with me and to stay consistent in staying in touch with me and making sure.
Oh, yeah. It's just been one thing after another here, but thank you for staying in touch. I really wanted to do this. I wanted to share my story, so this was really important to me. So thank you for making the time to have me on here. It means a lot.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure, and it's an honor, as I said. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
Let's maybe 6, 8, 10 months down the road, do a follow-up and see how you're doing.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
All right.
All right, sir.
Jeff, thank you so much.
Yeah, so thanks, Dave. You take care.
Right.
Bye-bye.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. I want to end this episode by thanking Jeff for trusting me and the listeners of this show with his story. Jeff, you served your country honorably, and when you needed honesty and accountability from the institutions around you, you were met with resistance and silence. What you've done through this conversation and through the vocal minority is reclaim ownership of a story that others did not want told. Your willingness to speak also reaches beyond your own experience. It challenges the conditions that allow abuse and institutional betrayal to remain hidden, and it makes it more difficult for the next survivor to be dismissed or ignored. Jeff, I'm grateful you chose Sexual Assault Survivor Stories as one of the places where your voice could be heard. I wish you and your wife nothing but the very best. To everyone that's listening, Jeff's memoir, The Vocal Minority, is available through his website, BookBaby, and Amazon. I've included links to each of these in the episode notes. Jeff continues to do his part to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault, and I encourage you to do the same. A great way to do this is to start by believing. Another impactful way is to normalize these types of conversations in order to bring down the prevalence rate and to help stop rape culture in our society, because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.